Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabados of Delmar, and we have two very special guests with us today. Tim Gordon, our own local assemblyman, and I have to give you also a mazel tov because you're only in the position for a few months, so I didn't give you a personal congratulations, or mazel tov as we say in Hebrew. We knew you when you were just right here in Delmar and Bethlehem, and now up to the state, and of course we wish you only good things and for your success. And of course, everybody practically knows he's practically my co-host, Mark Ronich. He's the head of the statewide news service, and he's our personal reporter, even though he's a reporter for all the state news over here, but he's our man on the scene. Welcome, Mark and Tim.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, Rabbi. All right, well, listen, Tim, you're right new in the assembly, but right away, you hit the ground running because there's so many issues that, of course, you have to deal with. You can't just take a back seat and go into like the spring training in the baseball. Sure. When you're in there, and your vote counts and your opinion counts. So we have actually a few issues that are on the table, so to speak, at the assembly. I'd like to hear your opinion of it, Mark. You can
one of the issues
elaborate.
Is about the death penalty. It's coming up, whether it should just be death penalty for cop killers, and whether it's worth it, whether it's a deterrent at all. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we did have the death penalty in New York State. It's been ruled unconstitutional, primarily because of the way the jurors are being advised. I think it is going to rear its head again. The question is it going to be in what form? Will it be for police officers, correction officers only, or will it be extended to other murders? I have never really been a supporter of the death penalty. I think there's too many opportunities in the justice system for things to go awry. We see people being released now with DNA evidence. There is an option for life without parole, but having said that, you say life without parole, well, that means some of these bad actors, we can sit around the table here and discuss it. We don't have to deal with them again. The correction officers do have to deal with them. So I am in support of capital punishment for law enforcement, for killers of law enforcement officers and correction officers. You asked if it's a deterrent. I don't know if crime of passion out on the street, how much of a deterrent it is. There's studies, debates about that. But I really, truly do believe in a correction facility. If you have someone who's committed murder several times or once even, I believe it truly is a deterrent. With the corrections officers, that's a rough job being a correction officer. They're on the maybe we don't see them, but they really are on the front lines, and what they do every day. It's a very difficult job, and I think we do need to give them that support. They have to deal with these.
Does it cheapen the life of a corrections officer if you have life without parole, and then these people like a Donna Payant and Lemuel Smith type of case? Donna Payant was a corrections officer. Lemuel Smith was in for life. He killed Donna Payant, and he was already killed prior to that on the streets. So does it cheapen the life of the corrections? Does that sway you at all?
I guess you could look at it that way. One thing we do hear an argument is, well, why is a police officer so much more important, or why is their life worth any more than a child that's murdered? And I don't know it's necessarily putting a value on all life is precious, but a first responder, a police officer, a corrections officer, they run into the direction of trouble when maybe more sensible people would think, let's run in the other direction. And one reason they can do that in the correction officers is because they know they have backup coming, and it's as long as you have backup coming and you're running into the trouble, I think we just have to support them in that way. I guess it's also a kind of situation being in a leadership position myself now, and something I even learned in town government here in Bethlehem. When you're responsible for the safety of the community, I gained a new respect for what the police force does right here in town. And the same's true for the correctional
What does the
officers.
Torah say on this?
As you asked me on the Torah perspective, it's very interesting. It's actually beyond the scope here. Everybody knows if they read the Bible even one time, there's death penalty for this, death penalty for this, and I get that as an argument. Well, how murderous is your Torah? You know, what are they, killing people? It's almost, I hate to say, like the Taliban, they say, that's what they ask me. Killing for this, killing, you're like barbaric, your Torah. You're supposed to be so humane. He says, well, stay tuned, and that's really, I'll give you a nutshell answer, even though it's really a long discussion. It's very difficult, even though it seems like everybody's getting killed right and left, they do something wrong. It seems that way, but it's in the reality is totally different. There has to be many witnesses, and really, even like we were talking about the death penalty, there's got to be 2 witnesses to see the act, not like you say DNA, or you know how they get people into crime prevention. So really, in actuality, and like I say, it's a whole discussion, but the bottom line, it's very, very difficult to give a death penalty. And actually, the Mishnah, the Talmud says, if a Sanhedrin, a court, gave a death penalty 1 in 70 years, it was like a murderous death penalty. What are you, killing people? So in actuality, it's interesting. Maybe it's a deterrent in a certain sense. You know, you're worthy of a death penalty, but they didn't actually do it. So, I mean, that's a little, maybe like a little bit, that's what you're saying. It's a determined, and maybe it won't exactly do it, but as long as it's known, maybe that'll say, oh, okay, I better, you know, this is serious.
Well, there are a couple of discussions surrounding that, in that there are people who are cowards who would kill other people because they want to really commit suicide, but they're cowards. Really? They can't do it to themselves, so they figure if there's a death penalty on the books, they kill someone else, then the state is in line to take their life, and they had more of a death sentence for themselves, so they kill someone for that purpose. There's another thing where I just was at an event.
But people really say that? I never heard
Yeah,
that.
there's documentation about that. Psychologists have said that. And then there's an event I was at recently, where where I found that 8 people in New York State were released after over a decade in prisons in the state, because they were fingered. There were people who said, "Yes, you killed, you did it." They were on life in death row or life without parole, and all of a sudden, someone comes forward and says, "No, I did it," or brags to someone and says, "Oh, I did this," and then one guy is standing there at the event, and the same day that the real guy who did the murder that he was in jail for got sentenced. You know, it's dramatic.
See, that's what you're saying. Actually, on one hand, I was a Torah perspective. On the other hand, I have a hands-on reality. It's almost like what Tim says. Once you see the inside story, your view changes a little bit. It's easier to say, "Oh, death penalty here. Get rid of this screwball," you know, and we who needs a guy who's a murderer. But I actually do visit Jewish prisoners in the state facilities, and I talk to them. And like you say, I actually know personally. I mean, they say there's evidence. He was on 60 Minutes to say, and he's 18 years in jail. And there's a hitman who says he did it. So before I say, yeah, kill him, get rid of these, you know, guys, such evil people. And then you're right. I mean, I guess it's validated that there are these kind of people. But I also see the corrections officer, just to conclude, you know, and I just see how hard it is also. I mean, you're without guns because they would pull them away from them, and you're lining up 50 guys. And half these guys are for murder, and they can jump you. I mean, something's got to hold these guys back over here. It is a very dangerous job that they're dealing with.
The only thing they have to protect them is that uniform, too, for the corrections officers.
You're walking on the halls.
Yeah. I remember Mario Cuomo, the former governor, gave a speech at one of the local colleges here, CSR, and he talked about when we had the death penalty in New York State prior to 1962, it was documented, and he read off the names of 8 people who were actually killed in the state through the death penalty, and then it was found out afterwards that they didn't do the crime. But again, you can't bring them back. Yeah. There were 8 people, and it's very dramatic the way he read off each one of the names, like in a roll call. Yeah. You know,
on the other hand, sometimes it's called for. I mean, you know, it's a big issue, and sure if we can debate it, how many people debate it, would be an interesting debate for hours, you know, going back and forth.
I don't think it's a debate where one side really convinces the other, and that's really not my intention. If someone in their heart is opposed to the death penalty, I would hate it for me to come up with an argument to somehow change your feelings. So I really admire that belief.
Well, the Codes Committee chair in the Assembly, Joe Lentold, changed his mind on this. And that's why it's not going very far, I guess, maybe, you know. But, I mean, it was dramatic. I mean, here you had someone who was staunchly, he's been in the Assembly for 30 years and staunchly in favor of the death penalty, right? And then all of a sudden, last year or two, he said, no, I'm against it now. It was amazing, yeah, so.
The amount of resources that the state wastes on the death row cases, too. It's one of the social issues that we talk about, and the press picks up on it. But a handful of people discuss it really during the campaign. People in the campaign, they're talking about cost of living, their taxes, property taxes, more taxes, cost of gasoline. I mean, it's really
not the death penalty is not what you're hearing when you go door to door. Is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's not gonna make or break someone being able to stay here in New York or say I'm gonna try to go to
That's
green.
like a hot
pastures.
issue when it comes up. Someone kills a police officer, it becomes a hot issue for a week. You know,
well, it's going to be an issue this legislative session. And I think that's why we're talking about it, because in the past several years it really hasn't been much of an issue. But now we have a
police
government.
officers, or
Right. Well, among other, just the issue itself is coming up this year. And you have a governor now who's in favor of it, knows the law, knows how to draft these laws, and can write the fine, arcane language to make this constitutional. So.
I think it's a compromise that will prevent a larger death penalty bill by agreeing to this cop killer provision. Trooper David Brinkerhoff did live in the district, the 108th Assembly District, and his family's just been a real inspiration how they've responded. We try to offer them some comfort when I met them, but really they were the ones giving comfort. They're a really extraordinary group of people.
And another law in your district that emanated from your district that was passed was Jonathan's Law. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, certainly. Maybe many viewers know Jonathan Carey is a 13-year-old boy, autistic child. His family lives here in Glenmont. Michael and Lisa Carey had been really very gallant warriors on Jonathan's behalf for over the last 2 years. He died in February, Jonathan did, at the Odie Heck Center while in transport, and that case is working its way through the courts now. But I had met the Careys prior to Jonathan's passing. There were situations of suspected abuse downstate at the Anderson School in Dutchess County where Jonathan was being cared for. And the Careys were unable to get records of the investigations. 95% of the cases of suspected child abuse come back as unfounded in state facilities.
Really? That
And
much?
it seems that number might not be in line. And the terrible thing, like a number of people will come to my office with issues, a lot of crime victims, and there's a lot of things wrong. That's why we have laws, to try to correct the things that are out of whack. And at first, you think, well, how can this be yours, parents? What do you mean they don't want to give you the records? And they were hiding behind HIPAA, and the law did allow them not to be able to, require them to release those records. So it was really lightning quick that Jonathan's Law was able to move through the Senate and the Assembly. This was all during the budget period, too. Within just a couple of months after Jonathan's passing, now the governor signed about a week ago Jonathan's Law, which will open up the investigative reports. What that will do, it does put some caregivers on notice. We want to make sure caregivers have the resources they need. But it's a culture that may have evolved here in secrecy. Transparency is the buzzword around the Capitol, and when people get to keep these records quiet, keep things in the dark, that's when bad things happen. So.
And the Careys told me on Sunday, I had a chance to speak to them a few days ago, and they said that that they're going to continue this because this bill didn't go far enough. It was what they could get through, but they really want to have. Did they discuss that with you? How much further they want to go?
Well, yeah, they have a couple other measures. One is that you cannot withhold food from a patient in order to alter their behavior. You're not allowed to do that with prisoners in the correction system, but you're allowed to do that to an autistic child or mentally incompetent person. Another bill that I'm sponsoring has passed the Senate, we're hoping to get to the floor, is to increase the penalty for abusing a mentally incompetent person. Right now in New York State, with Buster's Law, it's a greater crime to abuse an animal, a cat or a dog, than it is to abuse a nonverbal 13-year-old autistic child. It's a Class A misdemeanor. We want that to be raised to a Class E felony, same as like a Buster's law. It seems like a common sense thing, but so we're hoping to pass that. And yeah, the Carries are busy. They're at the Capitol still, even with the passing of Jonathan's Law. They're still regular fixtures in my office, and they have a number of measures there. They're going to be great advocates going ahead in the future.
And I asked them if they were going to be setting up something more formal than just the two of them running around. They're thinking of the Jonathan Carey Foundation. So that was newsworthy, that they're going to actually formalize their efforts and make it something where if people want to contribute, people want to donate and help them out, because they're really hurting financially also. And they're deeply religious people. And
What, personally or because just...
both. Both. Help them out personally, help them out with their cause, help them out with whatever it takes to, whatever costs there are with getting, with their advocacy. You don't want to say lobbying, because then they got to register and there's all sorts of costs to that. So with their advocacy efforts there, they need some financial help as well.
That's right.
Yeah. So, Tim, I also wanted to ask you about what it was like coming into the Assembly. Usually there's a mentoring system where a more senior member of the Assembly guides a more junior member or a freshman member. Who's your mentor? Who's guiding you?
I don't have a single mentor, but there is a strong Capital District delegation in the Majority Conference. Paul Tonko is the senior member, but certainly of note, Ron Canistrea is now our majority leader from Cohoes and represents parts of Rensselaer County as well, in Albany. He's certainly a great asset. Assemblymember McEnany from Albany, and then Bob Riley, who's 2 years my senior in the Assembly. His office has been super. So really, it's one of the great experiences. I'm a member of the Independence Party, but I've been very fortunate to have support from the Democratic Party that invited me to be a member of the Assembly Majority. Now, the press doesn't get to see what goes on in the majority conferences, but it's really, there's a lot of democracy with a small d in the conference. People complain about 3 men in a room, and maybe rightfully so, but you wouldn't want to get 106 of the conference members in there either. There's opinions, very diverse opinions in the Assembly Majority Conference, and we hash it out sometimes ad nauseum. But
well, I understand, when I talk to the Assembly Speaker, he says to me that he doesn't come out publicly with an issue that he might have an opinion on personally, but he won't come out until he hears from his conference, and his conference gives him the direction of what language to use, how to say it, what to say. And one of the issues I was talking to him about today was the gay marriage issue, and whether he's going to bring that forward or he's going to conference it, he said, and he's going to wait till his conference tells him what he should be saying, because I think personally he might oppose it.
well,
So that's my personal opinion. He probably opposes it, but he probably wants to have his conference. So that's the democracy you were talking about.
yeah, I think that's wise in the leadership position for him to do it that way. I was under the assumption, as many people probably are, that you'd walk in a conference and you'd say, good morning, everybody. Today you're going to go out there and we're going to do that, and you're going to do that, and you're going to do that. And it's really just been the opposite. It really comes from the bottom up.
So now in the Assembly, you sit next to Dov Hikind.
Yes.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's been a great
what's that? Yeah. What's that like? Another independent-minded thinker.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he's been in the Assembly probably for a couple decades. I think he's probably fairly safe in his district, but he's a spiritual man.
He's only really Orthodox Jew. Well, Speaker Silver is, but he wears a yarmulke on his head right in the Assembly.
And he represents either
Borough
Park, yeah.
He's a good friend, yeah.
So Dov Hikind, so has he given you some Jewish insights?
Oh yeah, that's great. I always kind of pump him for some information. And quite often I'll have some text with him, some Hebrew text. And
what have you learned?
What have I learned? Well, he's very much up on issues on a global nature. So, and he'll be reading the New York Times and ask me if I know about this guy or that guy, and some fellow reports for the newspaper in Jerusalem. And so he's giving me some guidance on some world issues.
Like about Israel and things.
Yeah, he's been an asset. I've been sitting next to him about 3 weeks, and we have a lottery. You move around, so. But he's been great. He's a tremendous asset. He's been very kind to me.
So is he a mentor? Do you think he's adopting you, think?
So far, so good. Yeah. He has been terrific. A lot of people to ask me, too, because I think he might be a mysterious figure to some folks. I had talked to him briefly before we sat next to each other. So he said, what's that guy hiking? What's it like sitting next to hiking there? But he's a complete gentleman.
Okay.
So.
Diplomatic, okay.
You know, we side on a lot of, agree with a number of issues. And
Is he a bit too conservative for you?
No, not from a voting standpoint. I think I may have out conservative
Conservatism, yeah,
a couple
okay.
votes. So.
Tell me about Sematech. We just had a recent announcement that's...
Yeah, that's really, really exciting. Sematech North has employed about 250 people here. A lot of that came out of Virgin about 10 years ago. The Assembly in the Capital Region delegation here put about $5 million into creating a clean room at SUNY Albany, and it's grown from that. And Governor Pataki took it under his wing, or everyone wants to take credit for successes, certainly, and moved it ahead forward. Now, Sematech also, as we've heard in the past, has a large operation in Austin, Texas, and the city has grown a lot, and there's been delegations have gone and looked at Austin, but there's a commitment now. Governor Spitzer has put together a program bill calling for actually $60 million investment each year for the next 5 years, $300 million for research facilities in relation with SUNY Albany here in the Capital Region. That's going to bring about 450 more excellent, direct, good-paying jobs in research here, and essentially it's moving Sematech's Austin, Texas operation to the Capital Region, to Albany County. It's huge.
Why do you think? I mean, just what's the advantage of Albany? I mean, I'm glad.
Well, one of the problems with
Austin.
Austin has been the road structure, the infrastructure, is that they didn't they outgrew what they wanted. The population grew from 60,000 to 120,000, and the road structure, the government in Texas didn't put enough money in, and there's traffic jams everywhere. We're overbuilt here, and we're the size of what Sematech needs. So that's one of the main issues is the infrastructure, and we're overbuilt, and so we have everything. We don't really. There won't be as much of a capital improvement in terms of building more ramps or more exits off highways, widening roads. There won't be a need for that, is what I'm told.
Interesting.
You know.
With the local communities, though, I think it is real important that we've had, while I was on the town board, we did put together the comprehensive plan and put the new zoning in place, because this will put pressures, some growth pressures, certainly on the communities. So
The suburban communities.
yes,
Yeah.
Surrounding communities. So I think that's a terrific thing, and we have to continue to update our comprehensive plan here in the town of Bethlehem under
The new supervisor?
Yes, our new supervisor,
Current.
Jack Cunningham, and the town board. And so that's a good thing that happened in the timing with that. But that's just, again, the research jobs. When manufacturing comes, generally you would think it would be hopefully somewhere adjacent here in the Capital Region as well. We got to make New York State the Empire State. Economic development, again, those are the things that people care about, bread and butter issues. Energy costs are too high in the state. We have to address that.
Well, the average job at a Sematech type of position would be between $50,000 and $100,000 a year.
Really?
So they're good paying jobs. And certainly you can afford a home in Bethlehem with a salary like that. So
And there'll be many
you know,
spin-off jobs.
what this is they manufacture these microchips that are so small. You know, you look at your cell phone from 5 years ago, and you thought that was small, and now you look at it and you're saying, "Wow, that was a big phone back then. How did I ever carry that around?" You know, and things get smaller and smaller. But there's an inverse proportion. The smaller the chip that they're producing, the larger the building they need to produce it in.
Really?
You know, so. I often wondered, why do they need such a big building if they're making something that small, you know? But it's like someone described it's like hitting the head of a pin in Albany from the moon. That's how precise they have to be in these clean rooms. It's amazing, this precision. So they build they make these buildings on these platforms that move accordingly, because you have these trucks going by the buildings, and the buildings
Even
have
that
to
little
adjust.
shake, even
Oh,
that
you
little
can't even
shake,
shake.
you
You'll be
can't.
way off. So you really got to build these buildings a certain way on certain types of springs and stuff. It's amazing to see the foundation and how the pillars that they put in, and why they need them to be that way. I took a tour of Sematech and the buildings at SUNY Albany, so it's really fascinating. You know, so that's what we're getting. We're getting more and more. And Intel has 70 acres of land, the rights to 70 acres of land out by SUNY. And we have AMD up in Luther Forest. So Intel and AMD are going to be together, competing close to each other. And that's what they want. They want all these types of chip manufacturing jobs all around together. One thing, one type of job attracts another. So, and that's what you were saying also about this could attract something more where the state campus is, and they're redesigning the Harriman State Campus. So, there could be a spin-off effect from that and help that develop.
Yeah, there has been some question. We've been talking about these developments for a number of years in Tech Valley, and is it going to happen, or will it happen, or and it looks like it really is coming together now. So it's exciting. And New York was called the Empire State originally for these kind of things because of the manufacturing. We had an economy that was as large as the nation's. A lot of our manufacturing is gone, but this is looks like a great resurgence in the new economy.
And we're still the 9th largest economy in the world. You got to imagine, New York State's economy, the 9th largest in the world. We're larger than most countries. Our state education budget alone is larger than most countries, than most states also. But that brings us to tuition tax credits, because you wanted to talk about that.
Yeah. Education, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was quite a commitment with education in the 108th Assembly District, $16 million more to the local schools, hoping that the school districts will use that to offset property tax increases and while still providing quality educations. So that's one way we can help. It's a good first step in the property tax battle. There is an issue out there for tax credits for people sending their kids to private schools. There's a debate. There's some people are opposed to it, but I think it's something we can favor. I think it helps people educate their children. And the reality is parochial schools take some of the pressure off the public school system. So generally, the people, the homeowners, are paying their property taxes for the public schools all the while. So I think it's okay for them to get a tax break for the tuition that they're paying, because if they were sending all their kids to public schools, it would just, the equation wouldn't work out. Actually, we need more people to pay their taxes and not send their kids to the school, I guess, in a sense. In Bethlehem, I think you need to have a house appraised somewhere around $300,000 in order to pay for one student. So you break even. Now, if the house is less than that,
and you have a few more kids.
If you have a few more kids,
it's going to be a loss.
Yes, and in fact, you have a number of children.
Yeah, but they don't go to the Bethlehem Public Schools. So I help out the city that way.
Right. So you're so you're doing
so
your
we're in favor of that
part.
Already. That's a good part. All right, we're out of time. Really, we're going to have to ask you again. I mean, I'm sure new issues. The world's constantly changing, and I'm sure there'll be new issues in the future, to say the very least, and we can count on that. But so we'll have to ask you again. But again, thank Tim Gordon, our personal assembly person over here. Again, success for going up and up here. We saw it from the Delmar. Now we're going up to the state, and who knows, give you a blessing for success. And Mark Ronish is always our reporter on the scene that keeps his hand on the pulse of everything in the state. And thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having us.